Welcome to Love Light, the only podcast dedicated to bright, fine art photography. Hosted by Sarah Jane Ethan, Love Light is here to celebrate all things bright, pretty and pastel. At Love Light, white is the new black and beauty is in the detail. This is your place to relax, a place to belong, a place to be inspired and connect with like-minded colleagues who share your passion for light and beauty. So come and introduce yourself in the Love Light Facebook group and subscribe to the Love Light YouTube, podcast and Instagram for your weekly dose of inspiration and connect with bright, fine art photographers from around the world.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Love Light podcast. Today we've got Molly Carr with us, and Molly Carr not only is a delight, I love her already. We've only just chatted a few minutes ago and she is just the most wonderful person. She is a destination wedding photographer who's based between Paris and the US, where she lives with her husband Ryan and their two rescue dogs, Yoda and Pika. And she has been a photographer for 8 years, starting originally in travel and lifestyle photography. She spent 2 months traveling Europe by herself, blogging her adventures, and over time transitioned to destination weddings and has since been featured in Harper Bazaar and Martha Stewart Weddings and Style Me Pretty. So I'm really interested to hear your story, Molly. What a fascinating start to your photography career, to travel alone around Europe for 2 months. That's quite something. How did that come about? First of all, thank you for joining us and being willing to share your story.
Oh, I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. You're just such a delight. And so, yeah, tell us about this transition into photography for you and how it all started.
So I actually at university studied marketing and fashion. And when I graduated, I got a job working in branding for Coca-Cola.
Wow.
And I did that for several years, started to kind of move my way up the chain of command there. And I learned so much. Looking back, I actually think that really has kind of defined me as a businesswoman and has really helped me. I mean, a company like Coca-Cola has literally the number one brand in the world. Just really understanding branding at that very deep rooted level, I think has been amazing for me as a business. But I did that for several years and I was just not fulfilled. It was a very, very high stress environment. And while I loved my team, I had always wanted to do something creative. I had always wanted to work for myself. I really wanted to travel more and just was not seeing that opportunity in the near future for myself working in corporate America. And I was having a lot of those, nights where I would just lay awake until 4 a.m. thinking about what I wanted my life to be. And I just had an epiphany that something needed to change, that I was too young to be pigeonholed into a life that I didn't feel like fit me and that I hadn't chosen. So I took a very spontaneous decision. I quit my job, even though no one could believe it. It was a couple of years after the recession had started.
Wow.
And I was thankful to even have a job in marketing. But I just really, something deep inside of me spoke to me and told me I needed to take a leap of faith. And I did. I left my job on great terms. I still have a relationship with some of the people I worked with. And 2 weeks later, I was on a flight to Europe. And I just really, something in me wanted to travel. It knew I needed that experience. And ever since the first time I went to Paris, I just connected with it on a very, very deep level. And I knew I had to go back. So I went to Europe. I had never done anything like that on my own before. I had never taken any trip on my own before.
Wow.
So it was, almost felt like something else was guiding me because it was an out of body experience.
Wow.
I couldn't believe that I was a very type A, rule following kind of, just timid person. And that all of a sudden I was taking this huge change where I was flipping my entire life upside down.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
Most people would never take a challenge like that. So to go, like you said, to that extreme where you're just like, yes, I'm going to live this life, see everything there is. Wow.
Yeah, I know. It was amazing. That experience, that trip completely turned my life in a different direction. And without it, I know I wouldn't be here today. It was completely eye-opening. It allowed me to grow so much as a woman, as an individual. It just really allowed me to realize how much stronger I was than I ever even thought possible. How, I mean, I just really felt empowered to create the type of life that I had always dreamt of living, but I didn't really know how to make it a reality.
Yeah.
And that trip for me, like you said, I started a blog with it. And initially, I had started that blog just as a way for my friends and family to follow along on my
Yeah.
adventures. This was back before blogs were monetized.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
it was just like really an online journal.
Yeah.
And with it, it was very photography oriented. And it just started to grow. And through that, I started to have people reaching out to me. I had it different brands, publications reaching out to me, wanting to use my work, wanting me to shoot for them.
Wow.
And that was kind of, for me, the initial foray into photography.
How interesting. So
Yeah.
you had no photography background before then,
I always had taken photography courses
right?
through high school, through college. I mean, I was very passionate about photography really since I can remember and have always done film photography, but I didn't have any, a degree in it per se. I was not at that time when I was working full time in marketing doing any photography, paying jobs on the side because really my time was completely spent with my 9 to 5 day job.
Yeah.
So yeah, that trip was really what started getting my work out there and giving me the courage to realize that I could pursue that dream and maybe make it into a life and a full-time job.
Wow, that's fascinating. What did you find yourself taking pictures of during that trip? Were you doing landscapes? Were you focused on people? Do you know what was because you were in a wonderful situation where you could just follow your passion, just
Yes.
photograph what interested you. So what was it that you were naturally drawn to as you were traveling to photograph?
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, it was a photographer's dream, and to this day, I still kind of look back on that and miss it because now when I travel, it's normally for work. I oftentimes I have my husband with me, so my entire day isn't just spent, really following the light. And that was exactly what I did. I was very drawn to both details and architecture, but with like a light specific focus.
Right.
And I would say I loved capturing just the street photography of different people enjoying their day, the locals, sipping a cup of coffee, reading a magazine, beautiful things like that. But I was just honestly following my heart and the things that moved me. I felt like I was so present as to what was going on around me that for the first time I was seeing things in a completely different light. I mean, I was seeing things that no one else around me seemed to notice because everyone's so busy
Mm.
with their day-to-day lives, on their, I mean, we had phones, but it wasn't like it is now where everyone's just on them constantly. But it really was, I would say, mostly just me following what
Mm.
moved me emotionally.
Wow, I think you probably learnt to see the beauty in the ordinary, just in the
Mhm.
day-to-day life, and actually that's a skill that comes in so handy when you're photographing weddings. Like you said,
It
noticing the
does.
things that other people don't notice
Yeah.
and then being able to capture that in a picture. That's so good. So it's
Yeah.
really interesting that you had the courage to leave what was a very secure job and to go and do something that was very unsecure and you
Yeah.
had no idea what that was going to mean for your future. And we chatted a bit earlier that I used to be in nursing and I did exactly the same thing in the sense that it wasn't for photography at that point, it was actually to pursue singing. And I spent many years as a full-time singer. It's another creative outlet for
Yeah.
me. And I had to leave a secure nursing job to go and do something totally different, much to the amusement of my colleagues, especially because I was
Oh,
going
yeah.
to a hip hop academy, which was hilarious. And so my colleagues were like, "You're doing a what?" I said, "A hip hop academy," and I'm like the least hip hop person you'll ever meet in your life.
Amazing,
and
amazing.
it was a fascinating thing because like exactly like you, it totally changed the course of my life, which eventually ended up with me doing photography, one thing leading to
Mhm,
another.
mhm.
And so talk to me about, because some of the people listening to the podcast here are still in their jobs, and are at the start of their photography career or their potential photography career. So talk about the what goes through your mind when you're facing this potential of leaving something secure but you hate to
Yeah.
something unsecure but you feel like is going to give you life, and you're just going to come alive with it. Talk us through what that was actually like for you, that process.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, to fast forward a little bit, when I got home from my trip, I did go back to working a marketing job. At that point, I was doing photography and slowly starting to build it, but I had no mentor. I didn't know anyone that owned their own creative business that pursued their art full time. So I was still very much unsure of if that dream was
Yeah.
even a reality and if it was something that I'd be able to do because I didn't really
Wow.
have any model to follow, anyone to look up to. I was just kind of blindly moving my way through the process. So I came back to the US. I worked in marketing still. At that point, I was doing more branding for luxury beauty and fashion, which
Right.
was more in line with what my passion had been, given that I studied fashion in school.
Uh-huh.
But again, it's still really for me, I think that trip, that freedom I had, I couldn't let it go. I could not let go that freedom once I had been able to experience it, going
Wow.
back to working in a cubicle to
Mm.
doing the PowerPoint presentation, all the things that come along with just being in a traditional corporate environment. I knew in my gut that wasn't right for me. I also knew that at that point I wasn't ready to really jump full time into photography because I hadn't figured out exactly what that would mean, what I wanted to do. I didn't have a defined vision. So once I started moving through, it did take me some time,
Yes.
which I'm really thankful for. So that's definitely my number one piece of advice for people
Yeah.
that are working full time but want to do something creative. I would say don't dive into it
Yeah.
so quickly because sometimes a dream, it's very small to begin with. I mean, I think of it like a little tiny flame, and you all of a sudden put this immense pressure on yourself
Wow.
to be able to take this tiny dream and turn it into an income. And sometimes you just put too much pressure on it, and I think that it can kill the dream.
Oh yeah.
So I think that really taking your time to explore different options. If you have one really defined passion, if it's photography, whether it's something else, start working your way to that, but
Yeah.
don't just take a complete headfirst dive
So
in
true.
because I mean, I think your dream is one of the most important things that you'll ever have in your life, and you have to protect and cherish that.
Wow.
So that was really I continued to work full time, but I slowly started booking business. For me, when I realized I wanted to go into destination weddings, I through my blog and through my photography started getting a lot of people reaching out to me about portraiture and
Okay.
different lifestyle events. And for me, that was when I really realized that photographing people and the moments and those beautiful connections paired with travel was where my heart was. And that was, I actually started out immediately doing destination weddings,
Wow.
which is kind of unusual because most people I know always say start in your market,
Yeah.
grow that market. And when you finally hit the ceiling, then you can start moving into destination weddings. But
Yeah.
for me, travel was such a inherent part of my personal brand and
Yes.
it was what people connected me with that it just
Interesting.
started to happen organically, which I'm very, very thankful for. But really, I would say my biggest piece of advice is just to take your time, but no matter what, don't give up on it.
Wow.
And when you feel ready, just take a leap of faith because
Wow.
you never know. I mean, none of us know what the future holds, but we do know that regret is a terrible thing to live with and it
Yeah.
will eat away at you. So I always think, I mean, I was very aware that if it didn't work out, I could go back to working in marketing.
Yeah.
I would be disappointed, of course. And I mean, of course, part of your, ego, it thinks you'll be embarrassed that you put yourself out there in front of everyone you know, only for them all to see you fail. But in the end, that it really doesn't matter. All that matters is just listening to what your heart tells you.
So
And
true.
that's really what I just have continued to do throughout my whole career. And it hasn't led me in a bad direction. So,
Wow, that's amazing. I think that's such good advice. Like you're almost nurturing your dream and treating it
mm,
with gentleness because it's still young and just not overwhelming it. And I
yes.
think it puts you in a strong position starting a business because I've seen people jump in both feet with very little security, or
Hmm.
money saved up in the bank, and then they're immediately in a place of panic where
Yes.
they have to take clients and the money's running out, and they're running around booking people who aren't actually right for them, but because they need the
Hmm.
money they're
Yes.
then too busy to pursue the right clients or find out to figure out, because it is a figuring out process. Where are
Hmm.
your clients and how do you connect with them? And you haven't got
Yeah,
the time or the headspace to do that because you're
I
running around
know.
to keep yourself afloat. So I think that's such wise advice, just to pace yourself and
Yeah.
be content with a slow burn,
Yes.
to get
Well,
started.
and like you said, I mean, with the whole aspect of financial insecurity, I know there are some people that actually thrive on that kind of,
Mhm.
in that environment when they know that they have 3 months to book $50,000 of business, or they're going to have to close their business and go back to what their initial job was. And
Yeah.
that's great. But I knew for me, I creatively do not thrive in that environment. And I recognized that at a very
Very good.
early time. So that was also part of the reason that I chose to structure my transition in that regard. Ultimately, I was doing destination weddings on weekends and using all of my PTO, my paid time off, to travel for them. And it got
Wow.
to a point where I was going to either have to start saying no to jobs or to leave and jump into those weddings. And for me, that was the perfect opportunity to make that move.
Wow.
So I mean, I I can think that it's unrealistic to always expect to start a new business and immediately be able to make the same amount you were making before, because it's like anything. I had been working full time in marketing for 6, 7 years. So,
Mm.
I mean, at that point, you are at a pretty established place in your career. You're getting promotions, you're getting raises. So, it's just like if you decided to go down a completely new career path and go back to school and study something different. When you leave, you're going to have to start at the very bottom again, which is completely fine, I think, because you really have to think long term and you're hoping to make this dream of yours your life for maybe forever.
Yeah.
So even if it means the first couple of years things are going to be tight, that you're not going to be having as comfortable of a life as you are used to,
Mm.
if it's worth it to you, I think you can make it work.
That's amazing. And so these destination weddings that were just coming to you because you had this travel brand and people were
Mhm.
attracted to that. Were you advertising anywhere, or was that just through your travel blog that people
Um,
were finding you?
I wasn't doing any paid advertising. I mean, I would say social media.
Yeah.
My first, let's see, I started getting inquiries based on different places that I had been, I had worked. Actually, one of my first weddings was at my husband and I had a destination wedding in California at a beautiful vineyard. And it was there because the owner of the property and I had an amazing relationship. She really, admired my work and she took a leap of faith on me, recommending me to one of her couples. And so that was one of my very first weddings at my own wedding venue, which was amazing. And I mean, who better to photograph your wedding than someone who's been married there themselves, especially a photographer? Because, of course, before I got married, I was scoping every single location and thinking about every detail down to the, light in 5-minute intervals.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for me, really, it was always just organic marketing and word of mouth and being very strategic from the get-go on how I positioned my brand.
Yeah.
I never showed work that I didn't want to book.
Yeah.
So when I started, I had a small portfolio like everyone does,
Mhm.
but I was very strategic about what I showed. And because of that, I started booking the kind of work that really connected with me on a deep level,
Yeah.
um, pretty much immediately.
That's so good, and definitely something I want to talk to you about, because you are obviously somebody who knows a lot about branding, because
Yeah.
working for Coca-Cola, and I think they are
Mhm.
one of the cleverest companies for
Yes.
branding. I mean, like you said, and it really just got your brain really alive with all the
Hmm.
possibilities of branding and all the things to consider. So for yourself, that gave you a real leg up, and I wanted to talk about your experiences with Coca-Cola later. But
Hmm.
you just mentioned about, okay, I only showed what I wanted to show. How did you decide? Because it's sometimes difficult at the very start of your business to know what your business is. What is your brand? Who are you? Who are your clients? And so, how did you navigate actually being confident? Right, this is my brand. This is what I'm going to show. That picture's out. This picture's in. How did you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, going more from a brand perspective, I could say twofold. First, having my blog really did help me because I had a very, very finely tuned eye aesthetically as to what was luxury, what was beauty, what I just really, I feel like I've always had that innately that I could just see visually how things would be interpreted by people.
Yes.
Also, one thing that I did right when I was starting out, which was incredibly helpful for me, was I put together a brand interview that I sent to probably 20 different people, everything from some of my past clients,
Mhm.
friends, family, and really had them evaluate me personally as a
Wow.
brand. And that was so incredibly informative. First of all, the number one thing that I got from people was Paris. Everyone connected me with Paris. They all thought of me as, the Paris expert. Even my home has all these French antiques. And that was something which I was obviously incredibly happy to see. But I realized this is something people already see in me. I'm not trying to create a brand or a person that I'm not. I
That's
just want to know how other people see my personal brand. And then I want to be able to put that into my online presence, my visual identity. And doing that was so helpful. So, that is something that I think whether you're new in the industry or whether you're just trying to figure out what your brand is and what differentiates you from people, doing that I think is so incredibly beneficial. I did a Survey Monkey free online survey. You don't have to make any investment. You don't have to hire a brand strategist to do that.
yeah.
Just take a little bit of time, and I think people around you will be really happy to help in any way because,
Yeah.
especially in a time like we're in right now, everyone wants to support small businesses. It's
Yeah.
very aware to the population that small businesses are in a very difficult position.
Yeah.
So your friends and family and your past clients want to help you, they want to support you. And that is such an easy way to just really figure out what you're about and what people see in you because it's not that easy to
No.
look at yourself and
No.
to see what others see. You see maybe what you want to see or what even people you admire, you kind of subliminally start to maybe emulate them. But if you're able to just get a genuine understanding of you,
Mhm.
then I think it's so much less work because you're not trying to make something that's not there. You're just
Yeah.
being yourself, which comes naturally to
I
you.
love that. Yes, because then it will just flow. You don't have to strive for it. It's just naturally
Exactly.
flowing from you. Yeah, I think that is the most helpful advice, and that's so practical. And that's homework for anybody listening to this podcast episode. Go and set up a Survey Monkey and get people to assess what they see of your photography and what they see of you. And if there's anything I've
Mhm.
learned about people, they love sharing their opinions. So I think people will be very happy to do a survey and critique, don't critique you, but just give their opinion on what they see in you. So, what kind of questions did you ask, or what kind of questions would you advise somebody who's setting up their own Survey Monkey to get an idea of their brand?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I can, if you want, I'd be happy to go through and find it and I can give that
Wow,
to you if you
that would
ever,
be brilliant.
if you have the show, you want to include it in the show notes.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
be happy to do that. But off the top of my head, it was things like, what brands do you associate with me?
Mhm.
So, whether someone would say Chanel or if they might say Saks Fifth Avenue or Joe Malone or things like that. What colors, what music, what places, just more open-ended questions. Um, how do you see my brand in a overall tiered perspective, luxury, mid-level? mid-tier. I mean, obviously you hope no one's going to say low tier, but I mean, it's good to get other people's feedback and to
Yeah.
know that you're going in the right direction of
Yes.
reaching that tier that you feel like is the most appropriate place for your business. But for me, it was mostly open-ended things like that.
Mm.
And I got some very, very interesting feedback. It was kind of fun because I sent it to people who are in the design industry who I know really understand that on a deep level, but I also sent it to some of my male friends who are engineers and
Nice.
who have a completely different perspective than you and I, or designers or people that work in fashion. And even to get what their perspective was really, really interesting. But like I said, for me, the key takeaway was Paris. And that was how from day one I always just really positioned my brand around my love of Paris, being a Francophile, sharing my favorite places. When I didn't have a huge wedding portfolio to show, I always had beautiful travel photos that were so, I felt like really articulated my brand, my aesthetic, and connected to my ideal client.
That's amazing. So then, how did you then build build a brand for a country that you didn't live in? Because you now
Yeah.
you spend your time now splitting it between, and your
Mhm.
business has enabled you to spend time
Yes.
in Europe. But at the start, that wasn't the case. And so, how were you getting confidence from people in Paris when
Mhm.
you were in another country? And how were you building that brand for a country you'd only spent time in, you hadn't lived in before?
I know. I mean, it definitely takes some courage and putting
Wow,
yourself out there and
wow,
things that inherently used to not come naturally to me whatsoever.
yeah,
I was never someone that I don't know who likes really networking, but I also think when you come at networking from a traditional business perspective, networking feels icky. But I feel like in a more creative industry, I love networking now because it's just genuinely connecting
yes,
with people
so
like
good.
you and I, and
Yeah,
just getting to know each other and being real. But it's also so different when your product is or service is yourself,
yes.
because you're not having to feel like a salesperson.
Yeah,
You're just being you and being
yeah,
genuine. And that
so
is, I
good.
think, so much more natural. So for me, what I did, I always traveled to Paris a lot because it
Right.
just was somewhere I was really passionate about. And every time I would go there, I would make an effort to start to connect with different vendors who were there. Also, who of which I had made relationships with over Instagram. For
Yeah,
me, Instagram, I mean, I'm sure you probably feel the same, has been absolutely imperative in growing my business because I've met so many people over the years through it, and just over time have formed really genuine friendships. And
amazing.
so that when you're finally together in Paris and getting a cup of coffee, which ends up lasting 5 hours,
Oh,
and so I really just took the time to invest in going to the market and going to look at different venues. And also, people always talk about styled shoots and if they're helpful. For me, I did them and they were amazing
wow.
because I started out my first styled shoot I did in France was in Provence. It was my sister was the model. I put it together completely on my own because at that time I had no connection with anyone in the industry in France.
Yeah,
So I wasn't going to try to put together this elaborate shoot with people that were going to be giving me their time, their product, their investment. So I put together, like I said, a styled shoot on my own and had my sister be the model and just started that way. And I always recommend that to people too, because
yeah,
I think it's an amazing way to really just show your clients the kind of work that you can
yes,
do and how you can best serve them.
so true.
So I think if you do them right, doing a couple of styled shoots, if you're looking to move very strategically into a new market, whether it's
Yeah,
geographic or I would say even a new market in regards to price point, can
yeah,
really help you just show them the kind of work that they can see that you can create for them.
yeah. That's amazing. Actually, it's very similar for me because I did a styled shoot right at the start of my
Yeah.
business. That wasn't other vendors; it was just me, and I had some friends that were torn between we want a like a post wedding shoot without wedding dress on, and we'd like one with the wedding dress on.
Mhm.
So I said, well, look, why don't you pay me for the post wedding one without the dress, and I'll do the wedding dress one for free if you let me
Amazing.
style you, and you
Yeah.
let me call all the shots, and I do everything I want. And so I got dressed them up, got, especially him, he was in braces and a flat peak cap, and
Oh,
I've got them
fabulous.
running in and out of the sea because my brand is going to be movement and not
Mhm.
worrying about your hair being blown, and all this kind of stuff. And it worked so well. And that shoot got
Mhm.
me so much work. Like,
Yeah.
probably for a year and a half, brides who were getting in touch were saying, I particularly love that shoot. I particularly love that shoot. And I
Oh,
still
that's
use one of the pictures now.
amazing.
Years later, I still
That's
use one of the pictures
amazing.
on my website now. And I never actually, ended up doing another styled shoot. I know a lot of photographers love doing them. I didn't really
Mhm.
want to do them, so I just
Yeah.
didn't. But I
Mhm.
didn't need any more. That was enough for me to kickstart my brand. So, but it didn't cost me anything. It was
Yes.
just really, it was no pressure, just
Mhm.
fun, just fun.
Yes.
Me and my ideas. And that sounds
Yes.
like what you recommend, which is amazing.
Exactly. It's exactly what I recommend. I think that if you do it well and you're able to position yourself well and use those images exactly like you did to the best of your ability, it can really help catapult you into
Wow.
another direction, which is amazing because I know so many photographers establishing themselves in a new market, whether it's because their home market isn't the type of client that is the best fit for them, or
Mhm.
maybe it's that they're moving. That can be really difficult when you have no established network or portfolio. But I can say that is exactly what I did. And it definitely takes a lot of time. It took a lot of airline miles. And,
Wow.
but for me it was worth it because it's where I wanted to be, plain and simple. I mean, I just knew that that was where I created my best art,
Yeah.
and it just at the very deepest core was me.
Wow. But you obviously went on to then create other styled shoots with vendors in France. So talk us
Mhm.
through how you plan a styled shoot in another country with people that you're not, actually in the country with.
Yeah.
How did you start doing that? Reaching out with vendors and organizing something when you're not there to actually be hands-on and face to face?
Yeah, so I would say all of the shoots personally that I have done, I have already had a relationship with them.
Yes.
So, for example, maybe I had a relationship with a planner. Typically, I think when you do a shoot, you initially find a planner to collaborate with because they're the ones that normally will kind of pull together the vendor team, connect the venue, and be the liaison between all of the artists involved. So for example, there was a planner who I had established a good relationship with on
Yeah.
Instagram. And we met in person in Paris, had a fabulous time, became really close, like immediately.
Wow.
And I went back, continued to stay in touch. And then I was going back to France in a few months. We got together again. And when I was there, I just threw out the idea, would you like to do a shoot together sometime? She said, absolutely. So we just took it from there. And also, I will say, her being in France, she had the network. She already knew the vendor. She had specific venues that she had been interested in working in. That really helped a lot.
Right. So she had
But
applications and everything.
exactly. But I would say it is definitely not impossible to do a shoot with someone who you have never met
Mhm.
before. I just really think for me, it's all about relationships and
Yeah.
being genuine and being authentic. So I think just taking the time to form a real relationship with someone,
Yeah.
and then they'll just want to work with you
Yeah.
because you both will want to work together to be able to hopefully share each other's services with
Mm.
future clients.
Yeah.
So I would say that anyone can do it if you want to do a shoot in a new market, but really you need to take the time to make those relationships versus just cold calling people
Yeah.
because I know, I mean, vendors, everyone's so busy, especially in this current environment that we're in, and planners in particular, who are managing rescheduling, managing, just really helping their clients, their vendors. And I would say just taking that time to form a real relationship versus just sending a cold call email and hoping someone will give you something in return is, I think, such a more sustainable way and ethical way to conduct your business.
That's so good. And I love that you said networking isn't like this big scary thing. It's just being yourself and making
Mhm.
friends with people. And I really love that. And I think you
Yeah.
and I are both people. We love
Mhm.
to talk and we love to connect. But if there's people listening who that doesn't come naturally to, and the thought of being themselves makes them break out in a sweat, like, are there little simple steps that you can advise them to get started, like on Instagram, for example? How would
Mm.
they take that first step to reach out to a vendor who they would like to connect with, or another photographer? Do you have any kind of tips, like a little easy, like ease yourself in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say my biggest tip if you are wanting to connect with a vendor, and I think nowadays, really, Instagram is one of the best ways, especially in the current environment where no one's meeting face to face. I think
Yeah,
Instagram is truly one of the best ways to do it. I think just start by liking their photos and
yeah,
commenting on them and leaving uplifting messages
so
and
good.
just genuinely sharing that you admire their work and leaving messages that feel real and thoughtful
Yeah,
versus just, leaving a heart symbol. Over time, they start to remember you. And normally people will comment back and you can start to just even have conversations through the comments section on
so
someone's
good.
Instagram.
Yeah,
But same with people's Insta stories, just beginning that engagement. I found conversation will just form naturally because I'll
yeah,
have vendors that will follow me, will comment, and after a few times, I'll notice that, and I'll go follow them right back because
yeah,
I realize they've been supportive of me. I look at their work, it's beautiful. I wanna see more of what they have to offer, and, I love that community. So I would say that is the best way and also the least scary way relatively because
yeah,
you're not having to go sit down with someone who you've never met and have a 2-hour conversation over coffee, which can be very intimidating, especially for someone who is very shy, very introverted, maybe lacks the confidence yet, which also I know when you're new, the confidence it has to be earned. So I mean you're new and we've all been there and you're
yeah,
not as confident of yourself yet. I found that just uplifting people is an amazing way to start to form that connection. And then it goes to the conversations of Instagram. And then maybe it goes to an email. And then maybe it goes to meeting and coffee. And then eventually, maybe it will end up with you doing a shoot together or doing an
yeah.
event.
Yeah, I love that. And I think what I've noticed, because I approached it very similar to you. I think we're very similar people in a lot of ways. I just complimented people and I just went out of my way to tell them
Yeah.
what I saw good things about them and their work. And
Yes.
most people, I mean, I can't think of a single person who didn't react like this. Everybody went, "Oh my goodness, that's so lovely that you said that." Like, nobody's ever said that to me. Do you know? No one's ever like reached out, especially because I was reaching out
Mhm.
to other photographers, and they were saying, loads of people were saying, "Oh, it's made me think. Yeah, maybe we should see each other as like we should compliment each other rather than just see each other as
Mhm.
competition." And oh, like,
Yes.
stay away. I just, my attitude was, "There's enough work for us all. Let's just be friends. Let's just get on." And actually,
Completely.
people really responded to somebody encouraging them, because most people don't have an encouraging voice in their life. And if you're a
Mhm.
creative, you're beating yourself up most of the time. So for
Yes.
somebody external to come in and say, "You're doing a great job, you are inspiring me as a
Yeah.
creative, keep going, please keep doing it," people are like, "Oh
Mhm.
my goodness, thank you so much." And like you said, then you're definitely on their radar then.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, I think and most people in our industry are artists. So your art is a lot of your soul.
Yeah,
And when
so
you're sharing that with the masses online, that in itself can be intimidating.
so
So when
true.
you have someone that just reaches out to you, like you said, and gives you that encouragement, that it just really resonates on such a deep level because they're not just complimenting you on something superficial like, you've got a great haircut or something
Yeah,
silly like that. I mean, they're complimenting you on something that you've created that is a direct reflection of your deepest self.
yeah,
And I think, I mean, and I even think uplifting people, it just spreads. The kindness
yeah,
spreads and it's real and genuine and it's not icky and salesy and networky
yeah.
in any way. It's uh, just starting. I mean, it's as cliche as it is, the rising tide lifts all ships, and it's really true.
It really is. And I think, it was definitely the heart behind the Love Light community as well, to
Hmm.
create. And I'm quite privileged now because I'm at the helm and I can set the culture, and we are encouraging to each other, and there's
I
no
love that.
uninvited critique. And if you say
Hmm.
anything, basically the motto is, if you haven't got anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And if you
Hmm.
do, you're out. So I've got the opportunity to really make sure this environment stays encouraging for people and uplifting for people, because that's what we need. Creative people need, like you said, somebody to hold them up and say, you're doing a great job, keep going.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
completely agree.
So I really want to hear about your experience with Coca-Cola and what
Yeah.
you learnt about branding, not only from your qualifications, but then practically putting that into practice with a company that is renowned for having, arguably one of the best brands in the world. So
Yeah.
talk us through what that was like working there and what you learnt about branding.
I mean, I think for me, what I learned, well, first of all, what it was like working there, it was very exciting, very intense. On my team was by far the greenest person. I had interned there in college. I had 2 internships, and because of that, I made an amazing relationship with my mentor, who was the director of marketing, and I got a full-time job immediately after graduation.
Wow.
Most people on my team had been working for the company for over 2 decades.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I mean, completely new, and it was a very much drinking from the fire hose kind of experience where immediately I had 40 projects that were thrown onto my lap. And
Wow.
so I mean, it was a very fast, very exciting. Everyone that worked there, I would say, was incredibly passionate about the brand, which was
Wow.
really neat to be a part
Yeah.
of, to see. And especially during times like the Olympics, when Coca-Cola is one of the, premier sponsors. During Christmas time, Coca-Cola has the classic Santa Claus, and people just always associate Coca-Cola with the holidays. That was a really fun and, I would say, uplifting time to be a part of the company.
Yeah.
For me, well, I think as much as branding, I learned about conducting oneself in a business environment,
Interesting.
which I think as an artist is something that we're not always comfortable with. So everything from project management to um, you know accounting to working with different professionals to being able even to send a very articulate email is something that doesn't always come naturally. And I mean, it comes by learning. And that was when I left, I felt like that was just second nature for me. I
Yeah.
had done it for so long, and really it helped me be incredibly organized, because when you have that
Wow.
many projects,
Yeah.
you have to be. So I would say it just really, as more of like a business back end
Mhm.
perspective, um, kind of guided me to be in a position that when I did start my business, I was
Yeah.
able to start it well, to immediately run it as a business versus just as a photographer selling my art.
Interesting.
And I would also say for me, branding, one of the biggest things I learned was about how a brand feels. So,
Yeah.
not as much, I mean, I don't really run my brand with very defined principles that you might learn in university. But I think, like, for me, what I learned there was the brand connects with a human on the very, very deepest subconscious level.
Interesting.
So, making decisions on what I showed, what I did for my business, that positioned me in a way that when people were to interact with my brand, at least I hope, gave them the type of feelings that I was really wanting them to connect with me, I
Yeah.
think helped me so much. And also, even thinking about a brand from kind of a luxury perspective,
Mm.
I I think even when you're thinking about pricing, all of those things come into play, and from a brand perspective too. So how you price yourself has a direct correlation to how people can view your quality of service.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
it's like when you're working and buying a product that, thinking about it even at the grocery store level, when you see something that is the discount store brand product, you immediately think of it as being a lower quality, even though
Yeah.
oftentimes it's manufactured in the exact same factory
And sometimes
by
even better.
exactly. But I mean, so much of it is just a very deep level connection, and so many decisions are made in that way that for me, I think it just I've always thought about my brand in a very defined way, and I think it just has always helped me when making decisions on how to move my business, investments to make, um, if I want to, kind of reposition anything, having that defined vision for what your brand is on a very deep level helps you just make those decisions so much more effectively.
That's so good. So it did really help, having that background has helped you significantly to have
Yeah.
confidence to build that brand for yourself. And now
Yeah.
you're facing a big move to
Mhm.
Paris. When are you
Yes.
planning that? Is that I mean, I know things are a bit on hold at the moment in terms of travel.
Yes. So, right now we were planning on moving at the end of the year. At this point, it is a little bit on hold because, like you
Yeah,
said, with travel, with borders, even with my husband's company, we're just waiting. So I'm still thinking it will probably be now. I'm thinking Q1 or Q2 of 2021.
right.
But at this point, I'm just really, I don't know. For me, I am a very much a planner. I think a lot of people, well, I know you said you're a lot more relaxed. I am a very type A person in general. And for me, this has been in a way a really eye-opening and it, I don't know, enlightening experience
Mm,
to recognize that we can't always just work our way exactly to where we want to be. Sometimes we have to acknowledge that things might move in a different direction. But I've
right.
always been really of the mindset that things will happen when they're meant to be, that the universe will kind of guide you where you're supposed to be. So I still very much am confident that it's going to happen. It's just right now I'm much more living day to day. And it's something I'm actually really cherishing and
Yeah.
relishing in this experience. And I think it's been really eye opening, I think, for a lot of people. And I just always try to look at the difficult and bad and scary things and try to see how I can learn from it and how I can grow. And for me, this has been a huge growth opportunity in that regard.
What do you feel like you've learned in this period then? You said you feel like you've really grown, and I think a lot of people are doing, a lot of introspective work in this time, really analysing themselves, what makes them tick, why do I do the things that I do? Like, and to figure ourselves out so that we can ultimately be more peaceful and more happy
Mhm.
in the future. So what have you learned in this time where you've been locked in your house and forced to slow down? A lot of us have just had
Yeah.
to slow down. Yeah.
I have just learned to truly embrace being present. I've
Wow.
always been one to, I do yoga, I meditate, I very much understand the idea of mindfulness and I strive for it. But even telling yourself to be present doesn't make you present.
So
It just, and I very much acknowledge that. But like I said, I've always been the person that I have plans for my business. I have plans for my life and I want to have a timeline. I want to
yeah,
have specific actionable goals. And while those are
yeah,
still incredibly, I think, important to have, for me, I've also learned to just really enjoy being present. And what's funny, I travel so much for obviously for my photography. I'm in Paris a lot. I mean, I'm back and forth between the US and Europe a lot.
wow,
And I love it. I mean, travel has always been such an important part of my life and part of my business.
mm,
But I've learned really to just appreciate the small things. I am loving being home more.
yeah,
I'm loving the opportunity to do things like oil paint, work in my garden. So for me, it's been very much a learning in presence and just trying to make the best of the situation that you're in
yeah,
now. Because thinking about the future, especially in thinking about weeks or months when so much is unknown, can be really scary.
oh,
And for me, I think I've just found a lot of solace in just thinking about the day and how I'm going to make today a beautiful day for myself, for my husband, what I can do to support my clients that are going through this situation, how I can continue to just be my best self has
Oh,
been such an eye-opening. And I mean, I really have enjoyed it to some
yeah.
extent.
It's so funny because everybody that I'm talking to, most people anyway, are saying the same. Like, I almost feel guilty to admit I'm really
Mhm.
having a lovely time. Like,
Yeah.
because I'm exactly the same. I felt like,
Mhm.
when my husband said to me, "Oh, there's a possibility we might need to stay in our homes for 3 months. That's what it's looking like." This was
Mhm.
before it all started, and there was part of me that just went, a big part of me that just went, "Oh, that sounds lovely."
I know.
And we're part of a very active church. And
Mhm.
so immediately, as soon as the lockdown happened, there was just Zoom meetings left, right, and centre. A Zoom meeting for this, and a Zoom meeting for that, and a community thing for that, and a community.
Yeah.
And I almost felt like I felt myself inside screaming, "Go away! Just go away,
I
everybody!"
know.
And I felt like, and it's I'm not insensitive to the fact that people are suffering and people are losing. And I'm losing. We're facing a big financial loss, and
Oh, yeah.
everybody loses, or
Mhm.
suffers pain of some kind, whether it's through a loved one, whether it's through financials, or just the stress of the unknown, like you said, which can be very challenging for some
Mhm.
people. That aside, I feel like I've been given the most precious gift to, exactly like you said, learn how to embrace a slower, quieter life. And I
Mhm.
realized, I already have been on quite a kind of spiritual awakening, if you want, for the last year or so, of learning how to be in tune with myself and discern what makes me happy, and to
Mhm.
craft the life that I really, really love, and
Yeah.
that I like right now, not a life that I want in the future, but a life that I love right now. So I was
Mhm.
already kind of there. And this is just like the next level where I'm just able to rest and enjoy the present and sit in the garden and watch the birds and do little
Yes.
projects. Like you said, I'm learning chess.
Mhm.
I'm losing, but I'm learning
Mhm.
chess, and I've never played it before. And you've got your oil paints back out. And I tried
Mhm.
to do that actually. I blew some eggs so that we could paint them for Easter, thinking,
Ooh.
oh, just do something different, just
Yeah.
something fun. And I sat down, I had my eggs, and I had all my paint, like, because I've had paints, from years ago that I haven't used, all my acrylic paints, and I didn't have any white. And I was like, ugh. And none of the shops like are open that sell it.
Yeah, you can't paint without white.
Yeah, £10 is going to like take 3 weeks to get here. And I was like, oh,
Oh,
and I just sat there with my
no.
old eggs, and I couldn't paint them.
Oh, I
One day
know.
I'll paint them, and obviously I like pastel colours, so
Of
white
course,
is
yeah.
very important. I need a white acrylic,
Yes.
so I'm going to paint it. Maybe one day I'll get round to
Yeah.
painting eggs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like we can't right now we're all realizing that we can't control the
Mm,
outside world, but all we can
so true.
control is what's going on inside of our home and inside of ourselves. And I mean, yeah, it's this funny kind of conundrum because on one hand, there's so much suffering. And I mean, I look at anyone that has a safe home to be in, food in the refrigerator as privileged. And thankfully, we
Yeah,
have those things.
so true.
So we can't control everything else. But
No.
like you said, I mean, I have just really chosen to look at this as a gift.
Mm,
And I think almost to even just really connect, like you said, on a deeper level with what makes you feel good.
yeah.
And I feel like now more than ever, I'm recognizing that so innately. I mean, it's just I'll start doing something. I'm like, you know what? I'm not feeling doing this anymore. And I just
Yeah.
stop. So, I mean, even things like that, I think like we all live in such a busy, busy world. And we either have two options. We can be scared and just spend every day worrying, which will make us go crazy and which will
Yeah.
make us not be able to support the people that rely on us, whether it's our partners, our families, our friends, parents, whatever. And I just really believe it's our job to try to really dig deep and be the best people that we can be right now and just choose optimism and choose to see the silver lining. And I think for
Yeah.
many of us that are fortunate enough to have a safe home, to have food,
Yeah.
there are a lot of silver linings and gifts that we've
So
been
true.
given in this time.
So true, because I heard through our church, because we've got partners in, partner programs in a lot of Africa, and I
Mhm.
heard of one of the pastors was saying about one of his congregation that they have got 14 children in a one-roomed house, and they
Mm,
have no savings, and they now can't work,
mm,
and that's it. They're going to starve, or that's,
mm.
what's faced with it. Like you said, it's almost,
Like,
I always feel guilty that we have such a comfortable life, even though
mhm.
we are facing now challenges. We've
Yeah.
got so much to be grateful for and so much to enjoy what we've got around us. Yeah.
I don't want to waste this time. I don't want to
Oh,
waste it just being scared, miserable, and laying in
yeah.
bed and watching Netflix all day.
Yeah.
I want to really just enjoy what we've been given.
I feel exactly the same. In fact, I've used those exact words with people saying I feel like I've been given a gift and I don't want to miss it, because I don't know
Mhm.
when this season will ever come again, this
I
type of
know.
thing. And like, it's funny, in the past, I remember I used to do singing lessons. That was my first business years ago. And it started snowing, and so a lot of my clients were cancelling, and so that was it. I wasn't going to earn because they weren't coming to
Mhm.
lessons, and I didn't even care. I just loved the snow, and I was like, more snow, just let it snow more. And I'm literally losing hundreds of pounds, and I don't care. And I kind of feel like that now, in the sense that this is having, massive effect on me and on my clients, and on a lot of us.
Mhm.
Part of me's going, don't stop yet. Just another few weeks stuck in the house. Like, I've got a few more things I want to do. Do you know?
I know, I know. Well, and it's funny because I feel like right now, for those of us that are not first responders, that are not doctors and nurses, I mean, obviously you were at one point, but personally, there's nothing that I can really do other than staying home to
Yeah,
contribute to the effort. But what I believe we all can do is stay positive,
yeah,
because we don't know how long this will be. And what
exactly.
our first responders and our medical staff, what they need is for us to be able to do whatever we need to do to get through this, to have a collective, I guess, human loss at the lowest level possible.
So,
And I just think we are doing our entire humanity a disservice if we're being negative,
wow.
because we need to be able to do whatever we have to do as a society to get through this. And I think really right now, all we can do is stay home and be positive so that we're
Yeah,
able to stay home as long as possible and
yeah,
as long as we need. And I mean, when you think about what other people are doing, that's a pretty easy job.
yeah. I love that. That strikes me that that is a good philosophy for life as well, even when we come out of this period. Because I don't know what things are going to look like by the time this
Mhm.
podcast episode goes live. I don't know whether
Mhm.
things have totally died down or whether we're still in it for the next year, and a half. I just don't
Yeah.
know. But I liked what you said, that if you're being negative, you're doing the world a disservice. And it struck me that if you are caught in worry about the future, you're not actually being able to be your best self. And the
Mhm.
world needs your best self. The world needs
Yes.
you. You've got some light to bring to the world, and some life to
Mhm.
bring to the world. And actually, the world needs you. The world needs you to
Yes.
be your best self. And that is you at your most happy and your most carefree and your most free and creative. And so actually, it kind of gives you a focus. Like, I've got to just find my place of happiness, find my
Yes.
focus, and so that I can bring my best to the world and contribute life and light to everyone.
Yeah.
I
I
love.
love that. I love that.
Well, there we go. That's ended on quite a philosophical note, isn't it? We have set the world to rights, you and me, Molly. We've done it. Molly, thank you so much for joining us. You do offer mentoring. You will offer face-to-face mentoring in Paris when,
Yes.
when we're able to travel again, but there is remote mentoring on offer
Yes.
regardless. So can you tell people how they can get more information about learning from you?
Absolutely. You can either go to my Instagram account or to mollycarphotography.com/education. And right from there, there is a entire section for you to learn more about my offerings and even to book one-on-one sessions directly through my website. So I think like you said, we've been given the gift of slowness and time. And that's one of the things that I want to offer people with my time that I have been given and was not expecting. Just if you are feeling like you're ready to take a dive into your next step, to follow your dream, to reevaluate your brand, to just try to help see how your business can let you live the life that you've always dreamt of, I want to be able to help you.
I love that. That is so good. And you've done the big jump from the corporate world into a business which has been international and is, giving you the chance to travel. So you are an amazing person to learn off. So I thoroughly recommend for all of you to take advantage of this, chance to learn off this really wonderful woman and her incredible wealth of knowledge and experience. So thank you so much. I feel like you've been so open and honest with us and incredibly practical about things to do. So this has just been the most amazing conversation. And we're so grateful for your time and for everything that you've given us. Thank you so much.
Truly, the pleasure has been absolutely mine. Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, you can find more interviews, tips and inspiration in the Love Light Fine Art community on Facebook. You can also follow along with each new episode on the Love Light YouTube, podcast and Instagram. And don't forget to visit www.sarahjaneethan.co.uk/lovelight for information on training, real-life wedding workshops and online courses to develop your own fine art photography and connect with more of the clients you love.